never know if it could change your life. Take a chance, you're neither wrong or right. You never know if you don't roll them dice. You better roll them dice. You never know if it could change your life.
I was sheriff of this county when I was 25 years old. Hard to believe. My grandfather was a lawman, father too. Me and him was sheriffs at the same time, him up in Shalavant and me out here. I think he's pretty proud of that. I know I was.
Yeah.
Some of the old-time sheriffs never even wore a wand. A lot of folks find that hard to believe. Jim Scarborough never carried one. That's the younger Jim. Gaston Boykins wouldn't wear one up in Mintar County. I always like to hear about the old-timers. Never missed a chance to do so. You can't help but compare yourself against the old-timers. Can't help but wonder how he would have operated in these times. There was this boy I sent to the gallows at Orkbone here a while back. My arrest, my testimony. He killed a 14-year-old girl. Papers said it was a crime of passion, but he told me there wasn't any passion to it. Told me he'd been planning to kill somebody for about as long as he could remember. Said that if they turned him out, he'd do it again. Said he was sure he's going to hell. Be there in about 15 minutes. I don't know what to make of that. I sure don't. The crime you see now, it's hard to even take its measure. It's not that I'm afraid of it. I always knew you had to be willing to die even to do this job. But I don't want to push my chips forward and go out and meet something I don't understand. A man would have to put his soul at hazard. He'd have to say, okay, I'll be a part of this world. Matt.
Rob, there's no 5 nations for old men, I think.
Welcome to Dungeon Master of None, everyone.
I'm Dungeon Master Matt.
And I'm Dungeon Master Rob, and we're out on the wild frontier today. We're in the evening of redness in the west.
Yes.
You know, the grim space at the edge of the map. We're talking about Frontiers of Eberron. Quickstone.
Yeah.
Yahoo! Yeah.
Yeah.
Whip crack, you know.
Yeah, it's a Western Eberron setting, and yeah, we're sitting around the campfire cooking some beans, and trying not to think
salt pork, and yeah.
Somewhere between, the fun of the quick and the dead and the creeping terror of a tree of babies of Cormac McCarthy. We're somewhere in that Western space.
That's right. Yeah, and the broad swath of Westerns, yeah, which contains multitudes, everything from the beautiful madness of Wild Wild West to the miserable nihilism of Unforgiven. That is the space that we inhabit. And yeah, this came out a while ago. It took us a bit to get to it.
It came out in the last quarter of 2024.
Doozy of a book by Keith Baker and friends. A whole crew.
The authors are Keith Baker and Imogen Gingell.
Yes.
With many additional credits from some of your favorites from the continuing Eberron crew, some of the folks from the old Manifest Zone podcast. And it's a little bit, like riding off into the sunset, like, the closing of the frontier, a bit of a bittersweet book in that, at least for the time being, it seems like it will be the last focused Eberron book from this crew here. There's been some good ones. We've talked about Exploring Eberron and Chronicles of Eberron on the show before, but this one seems to be the last one for a little while, at least.
I hope, for me at least, spring is eternal, because I thought Eberron was kaput for a very long time. I thought when 5e launched that we wouldn't see any new Eberron books, but I don't know, sheer willpower and badgering finally got Wizards to make more. So I think it's probably correct that this is the last we'll see for quite some time. Maybe it's not the last forever, but it is a strong, if bittersweet, note to go out on.
Yeah, and if you're wondering what you're getting here, so I'm going to try and avoid talking like old-timey West.
It's going to be hard. It's going to be real hard.
Whole time. It's 257 pages from the DM's Guild, which, of course, you can get PDF or a print-on-demand copy of. It's like a setting book, but if you imagine the world of Eberron covering the entire world, this is a drill down into like a region-sized area between the nations of Breland, Drome, and the Eldeen Reaches, a kind of frontier zone on the western edge of the Five Nations. And if you're wondering what it is, like in a tagline, I would just say it's the West with monsters, right? A lot of monstrous people and creatures. And if you ever want to, look at some art of a Medusa in like a saloon get up, well, this is the book for you.
Yeah. If you ever wanted to play a Warforged cowboy or a lightning rail, Pinkerton gnome, this is the supplement
Also,
for
yes.
you. And that's kind of like, this is kind of wild because like this has always been relatively rare in the world of TTRPG supplements, but a book this niche that is so rich in like setting and detail on such like a tiny portion of Eberron is, to me, a delight, but like not something that you see a lot of in really for any setting. They really drilled down on not even like one whole nation, but like one border zone between two. And personally, I think the result is great, but like this is the kind of thing that you just do not get a lot of, especially in 5e.
So, yeah, I guess this brings me to like my overall take, which is this is a very good setting book. Not only does it like have a great gazetteer and awesome factions and, of course, player options, but it has, I think, a great starting adventure at the end that is a great launching for a further campaign. The caveat is, in order to really get the most out of this, you've got to pass two hurdles, which I think most people will pass. Is A, you have to like Eberron, B, you have to like the Western genre. But if you pass both those hurdles, then boom, this is amazing.
I mean, as you can tell, I love Westerns. I am a huge fan of Westerns, the Western genre, the Western storytelling style, the Western aesthetic. I also think that it's such a vernacular that like it makes it it's got its own style and language that it's one of the easiest, I guess, genres to just mash with another genre, right? Space Western, fantasy Western, apocalypse Western, just mash it all together. It works really well. I think it's just like there's so much, everyone understands sort of like the tropes and ideas of a Western because, I mean, it's so deep, right? Because the Westerns themselves are based off of like samurai films, and it's, they build on each other and they relate, and it's, books, movies, TV shows. Everyone understands the Western. So obviously I love this, but Matt's right. There is like, when I say niche, I don't mean that in any sort of pejorative sense, but this is niche. You have to want to engage with a Western setting and play a Western type of game, and you probably want to do it in Eberron. There are some things in here that you could borrow, a lot of things, but it is a Eberron book. I do think a lot of people who are Eberron fans would be able to get a lot from this, run this campaign. I think it's great. I think this would be a great place to start playing in Eberron if you haven't already, but just be aware that this is a thing, a very specific thing.
Yeah, it's super specific, but it does what is promised on the tin, like an Eberron Western, really well. I think this is the perfect way to do a Western if you're talking about your mashups, Western plus fantasy. I always kind of, when there's like some sort of TTRPG book comes out that's like, this is the Western game, that's fine, but the ideas of the Western and the frontier, it's like it needs to be a specific region in a larger world, right? The assumption of the frontier is there's other things beyond the frontier, and then there's a place where that's pushing the frontier. And Eberron's perfect for okay, we're doing one specific part of the world where those influx of pressures create a sort of Western-ish place. And so that's perfect to me. I don't need a whole world where everyone's a cowboy, right?
Right. That's a great point. The Western has to take place. I mean, I think that it's just, there has to be more than just like, this is the Western game. And there are very, I honestly can't think of any that are very successful, right? All of them are some kind of
Deadlands.
Well, Deadlands is the only one, but Deadlands is also like it's got its own thing. It's not just a Western, but that's probably the only one I can think of that is mostly Western and not some kind of
that
combination.
That Kickstarter we talked about that took 15 years to fulfill and then actually ended up releasing.
But that's a great point. Okay. that only helps my argument, Matt.
Okay, sorry. Well, so I think how does this one spin the Western in interesting ways? And I think the first interesting way is that the frontier is between one of the most interesting places in Eberron, which is the nation of Drome or something like that, which is a nation that is new and is like monster land, right?
Yeah.
Most of the people who live there are gnolls or kobolds or harpies or gargoyles, and the rulers are hags. You know, it's different than the human elf dwarf places of the rest of the continent.
The other thing that, makes it a subversion or a twist on the Western is that it's fantasy, right? And it's not like, Magitech, like, there's they don't carry guns, they carry wands, right? And like you'll have all the trappings of a gunslinger, but they're a wand slinger, and there's still like a telegraph service, but it's sending stones. It's this is one of the beautiful things about Eberron that we love, is that it extrapolates a sort of industrial society based on actual magic, not just like magic used to approximate industrial technology, right?
And then my expansion on that is that while Eberron is a place where the humans of Korovar, of the main continent of Eberron, treat magic as if it was a science, right? They study it and stuff like that. It's still fucking magic. It's still weird,
magic. That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
And the encounters and the factions and the places you can go are still full of the mystic and unknowable and weirdness that you like about fantasy.
Yes, that's exactly right. And that really comes to a fore in Frontiers of Eberron, where you'll have all of the familiar tropes from your Westerns. You'll have frontier towns with sheriffs and train stations and Warforged preachers, but then you'll also have them on top of ancient unknowable ruins and strange phenomena from the ancient past and bizarre and unknowable fey creatures and so on and so forth, and it works really well together. It's a very interesting mix, I think. The other thing that we should address, because I think it's potentially controversial, is that this is the monster player book. If you want to be a monster, if you want to play a monster, if you want to play a gargoyle, if you want to play a Medusa, if you want to play a hobgoblin or a goblin or an ogre or a bugbear or a warg or any number of other monstrous creatures, this is the book for you, because Drome is, as we discussed, a nation of harpies and hags and tieflings and changelings and shifters and all kinds of like monstrous races. And it's, Eberron subverts tropes, right? They're not inherently evil. They are not trusted by the humans of Corvair, but they have their own interests, and they are a civilization of their own right. I don't have any problem with this, but traditionally in D&D, people tend to, get their hackles up sometimes when people want to play monstrous races or monstrous PCs.
Well, I think most people's objections to this are stupid, right? If a player wants to play something cool, you should let them.
Just let them.
But I mean, the like practical suggestion is like, okay, you have a party of everyone is a human except for this, one person who is playing a creature that the world you built considers monstrous. Then maybe every like scene has to grind to a halt, as
right.
And a good DM should be able to make this work. But if you don't want to have to worry about that, if you want to play in a place where you're still unusual, right? Because players want to play a monstrous creature for a lot of reasons, but it usually boils down into I want to be unusual or unique. If you want to start in a place where there's not huge objections to the presence of an unusual creature as a player character, the frontier on the edge of Monsterland is the perfect place to start.
And historically, I mean, I think this is great because historically the frontier has always been that place, right? That has been where the outcasts and misfits and weirdos and rejects of society have been able to find and create their own place to interact with each other, not always in positive or healthy ways, but sure. they coexist, right? Like, you've got all kinds of people coming together to take advantage of both opportunity, but also a lack of structured order and, law, for lack of a better term. And
of course, it always attracts the monsters that are not recognized on the surface as monsters. You're George Hurst types.
That's exactly right. Yeah. I mean, I love, this is why I love Western. This is why I love a frontier story. It's interesting, right? It's an interesting place to tell stories. So that's, I think, that's deliberate about Frontiers of Eberron is that the monsters are front and center. They are a big part of Drome, and they interact with the standard humanoid races of Corvair in all of these places. And you are encouraged to think about, what those interactions and what that tension looks like.
Should we talk more about some general stuff, or should we get into some specifics on
There is a lot in this book, so we should probably start talking about some specifics. This is not a complaint, but it is kind of wild that this is a nearly 300-page book about really just like a sliver of Eberron. And this is what I love about Keith Baker and what I love about the team is this is what I like to read. This is what I want to read. Give me more of this, but it is just kind of crazy that, compare this to like what we got on Greyhawk in the Dungeon Master's Guide, and it's just, It's an embarrassment of riches.
Well, I will say the advantage of like drilling down to this region is you essentially have everything you need to create your own campaign set in this region, or to use the suggested starting campaign to introduce your players to this region and go, begin writing your own campaign as you're playing through the introductory adventure. And we're first introduced after the big stuff about themes and the West and what you should expect from the book to exactly what Rob was talking about before, is playing monstrous creatures. And what I love about this is a lot of like splat books for Dungeons and Dragons or other similar fantasy games give you like the 2-page, here's a new species, and it's mostly the stats of that species and some common names or something like that. This goes into like, what does it mean to be like a harpy, and what are the exceptions to what that means? It's enough that if you let a player read those like 4 pages on being a tiefling or a Medusa or a Minotaur, like they'll have enough to make a really interesting character out of.
Yes, absolutely. The book really focuses on what are the themes that are important to this area and this campaign, what's important to these cultures, what's important to your characters, and then later it gives you stats for how to build out, a PC. But it really does a good job of emphasizing like this is what it's like to exist here and what a campaign set in the frontier is good for and what sort of like themes make sense. I really like how it guides players and DMs here.
Yeah. Great information for DMs writing a section of a story or a campaign that centers around one of these groups of people that the rest of Eberron considers monstrous, or a player character making some stuff. And then we're basically on to, what we all came here for, which is a gazetteer, right? And what a gazetteer it is. So if you're at all familiar with Eberron, right? This area, the area around Quickstone, this frontier of Eberron, takes place west of the nation of Brelin. And Brelin's like, the sort of industrious, pragmatic nation of humanoids in Eberron. It's where Sharn is. They have a monarchy and a parliament. It's all like pretty familiar. There's a lot of industry, magical stuff like that. And on the other side is a nation ruled by hags. And nearby is another kind of frontier area ruled by druids with strong connections to the Eberron's version of the Feywild. So you basically get three, and then sort of layered underneath that, this was once a strong place of the goblinoid Dakan Empire. And so in this one area, you have like 4 types of Western frontier things you can draw on that you can play up as much or as little as you want. You got the like weird magic Feywild frontier. You got the kind of typical humanoids defending a border. You've got Monsterland building a kingdom. For what purpose? Up to you. And then underneath it all, you have the ruins of once powerful goblin civilization.
Yeah, and Breland is I guess like you know, like in Galarian, how like I don't know, like Andoran or Taldor is kind of like I don't know, good America monarchy. Breland is a little bit like that. It's it's a center of innovation and quote unquote freedom perhaps and commerce, and it's expanding westward, right? Because it's that's what one must do, but it's not expanding into nothing, right? It's expanding into
a land that they once claimed as theirs.
That's right
too. So
and there's this is one of the things that's suggested in the there's a list of suggestions for types of play and campaign, and one of them is political or based on war. There's nothing in the starting adventure or in the book that suggests that Drome and Breland are going to go to war anytime soon, but there are obvious tensions and clashes along this border region, and I think it's like really rich for political intrigue and for explorations of sovereignty, and your players could find themselves throwing in with one side or the other. I think they do. Eberron has always done a really good job of not having like obvious good guys and bad guys, and in fact having a lot of like very complicated factions, like the Utopian Islands with run by good dragons, or the that's also kind of evil and has brainwashed everybody, or the undead elves, but they're positive energy undead elves, or
they're still creepy.
How the Church of the Silver Flame is obviously like good paladin guys, but also maybe it's run by a demon overlord or something like that. It's Eberron is full of this stuff. So like Drome is a nation of monsters that's run by night hags, and Breland has a good king ? But also is ruled by more or less like run by the Dragonmark houses, that are maybe not all that benevolent, and your players don't have to like pick a side, but like as these this is what makes the frontier interesting, right? Like it is a place where different forces and different like both like political forces, but also like economic and historical forces are coming together to create tensions, and you can do a lot with that, right?
The key to the world of Eberron is that the last war is the 100 Years' War plus World War I, and it ended in essentially a truce stalemate, and everyone knows that another war will one day come. Of course, unless heroes can stop it. And Drome and Breland are like maybe the most obvious place where a war will start again. And of course, if any two nations go to war, this could drag the whole continent into it. And so if you want a big, campaign that goes the red line flying, breadth of Eberron, starting one here, where the players see that a war is being churned up, and then figuring out who is behind it all and trying to stop it, that would be a great campaign, of which the like first arc would take place here on the frontier, and then they move to the halls of power.
Though that being said, I mean, that's just in the background, right? This is actually also like a really, really good place for much smaller, much more focused stories. And I think that is one of the things that the writers want to encourage. And because it is kind of like a sparsely populated, distant frontier, and, you know, some of the most important things that may be happening are, you know, somebody's cattle have gone missing, or, you know, there's a group of a particularly unpleasant group of bandits that are menacing one of these tiny, tiny towns, or, you know, the kind of stories that you get in a Western like Shane or Unforgiven or, you know, The Magnificent Seven. You
got the Company of the Black Crown. Basically, they're like the, you know, just disaffected last war veterans who have turned to banditry. They're terrifying.
Speaking of, this isn't even the focus, but there's just so many good, like, there's so much thought given into the remnants of the last war, right? There's the Black Company, who are basically veteran bandits, and Breland, or the frontier of Breland, tolerates them, but they're pretty nasty and drome. And then there's also the Sons of Liberty, who are patriots, who also hate the king and are maybe terrorists, and who operate with some kind of impunity in the sort of like frontier region. And then there's the Grizzlies in Quickstone, you know, veterans of the war who kind of just settled and are disaffected. There's a bunch of Siren refugees. I mean, yeah, the sort of like detritus of the war is everywhere in this frontier region, which is cool, which I think is like a very, like, you know, smart way of portraying, like, you know, this is what happens with your, you know, cast off veterans and war material.
Yeah. I think a lot of people, when they think of an Eberron campaign, probably think of Sharn, you know, intrigue and murder mysteries and double crosses and that kind of fun stuff. Or if they think like exploration and like building of power or something like that, they're probably thinking, oh, you're in the city of Stormreach.
You're right.
Which is essentially like
right,
humanoid colony on another continent. It's a more Indiana Jones exploring the frontier. But if you want to do that kind of like exploration, like players build power, make alliances, see what's out there from, you know, whatever their starting base is, this is a great spot to do it. If Matt, the players need to go to Sharn, they can be there in like 2 days, you know?
And I know you know this, but like, what do those three things have in common, right? Like, those are all pulp stories, right? Like, those are all things that you would find in the pages of amazing comics or something like that, or like, you know, wonderful stories, right? You'd find a detective story. You'd find a, you know, Indiana Jones style, you know, Tarzan wilderness adventure story, and you'd find a Western, you know, or something like that, you know. And I love that. I have loved that Keith Baker has always like had this like pulp aesthetic at the core of Eberron, and this expands and stays true to it. And yeah, and you can easily like sort of like move between them. Like Matt said, you could go back to Sharn for some intrigue, or travel to Zendrick for a wilderness adventure. And yeah, I think there's a good reason why they focused on this region and put so much effort into it.
Back to the Gazetteer, you know, it's a great mix of, and again, you know, Eberron Gazetteers should be a guide for anyone trying to flesh out their own world. It's a great mix of like settlements, ruins, just interesting locations that you kind of mix in. Some of the settlements have really strong ties to one of the factions, like the Dragonmark houses or Brelin or Droem. Others don't. Any particular, you know, we got a great write-up of Brelin has one leftover from the war, just floating fortress, which if this is Serenity, this is that the Alliance cruiser Dortmunder,
yes.
The Dortmunder, where it's just like you come back and everyone's under arrest for something and you got to talk your way out of it. It's
Argonne.
You know.
Yeah, there's a big write-up on this big floating fortress. I think this is so cool, too, because it's explicit. Like, this thing is expensive, but also like not that useful. Like this isn't like how people. It reminds me of all kinds of like this happens all the time in like the 20th century.
Right, this is the F-35.
That's right. Like
military industrial complex.
It's like it's a battle cruiser, right? It's or a battleship, right? Like we don't like. There's no point in that vessel anymore. This gigantic, slow-moving thing that can be blown up by missiles from anywhere, but was the cornerstone of World War II naval doctrine, right? And now you've got this big floating fortress, which, you can't just decommission. So they post it out on the frontier to make sure that nobody gets any ideas. But yeah, it's a great setting for all kinds of things, just like a cool thing to include. Yeah, they include a bunch of different towns, which is great. There's a lot of detail on all the towns, including who lives there, what kind of establishments are there. Like, it's very thorough. I really appreciate this. It's sometimes too thorough, but like it gives you so much to work with.
The one thing I really appreciate about the geography of this region that they've cooked up is it's perfect for players to explore. So, in the title, Quickstone is a scrappy, small frontier town. It's digestible. After a couple adventures and sessions of play there, players will know most of the main NPCs. And then essentially you pick a cardinal direction that you're moving your campaign in, or your players pick a cardinal direction. And if you go to the north, things get orcish and Feywildish and Eldeen Reachish-ish and weird, and Lamia, I think is the name of the plane, right? If they go back east, there's the humanoid frontier, and as Rob was saying, parliamentary terrorists and stuff. If they go south, there's ruins of the Goblin Empire to explore. If they go west, it's Monsterland.
It's Monsterland.
Yeah,
and you could set a hex crawl here. The map is explored, but it's a lot of like barren waste, and you could easily fill it in with encounters and ruins and unnamed little towns. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot. There's the Gazetteer has towns, it has personages, it has faiths, it's got lots of tables. I love tables. We love tables here on all kinds of things. Villages and encounters who you might see on the road. There's a big road that runs through this, Route 7. I love a named road, Orion Route 7. This is, central to this is that currently House Orion has not a monopoly, but a pretty strong stranglehold on transportation with their lightning rail, and they are potentially trying to sabotage House Lyrandar's attempts to build an airship port, in one of the larger towns. I mean, this is classic Western stuff, like, trains, eminent domain, ranches. It's all the stuff you love to see.
Yeah. Oh, I just remembered the name, the name, just very much mirrors the most popular Western show on TV, Frontiers of Eberron, Yellowstone. No,
that's right. Oh, it does.
Now, this also, speaking of Westerns, but fantasy, this Gazetteer, if you're wondering as a DM or looking for something to steal, how to make the locations your players visit fantasy. Pretty much every place in the Gazetteer has 3 to 5 bullet points, interesting things about, and 2 or 3 of them are usually what's weird and magical about this place, whether people live there or not. Hey, here's a town where, there's a lot of honey farming, but the bees are actually magic, and the like road wardens keep swarms of bees like dogs that help them, do their duties or something like that. Just like little touches of the fantastic where everything. It doesn't just feel like you're playing a Western where guns are swapped for wands. It's magic.
It's magic. And everything. And there's so much weird stuff, so many hooks. This is, as always, a great book for hooks, and all the locations, even if at its core, it's just like this is a Western town, has something, possibly many things going on with it that are that are very weird and unusual and unexplained. It's, everything ranging from there's ruins to this town is run by a mind flayer to, there's, this unknown entity lurking in the woods nearby. And they do a great job of giving you enough to work with, but also saying, here are the things that we don't know. Fill in the blanks. I always love this about Keith Baker's always very explicit about this. He's like, figure it out for yourself. He's happy to say, these are the things that I have not written down. Fill in the blanks. And I love that. I really appreciate that.
To give us a break from before we talk maybe about factions in the town of Quickstone itself, to talk about mechanics, there are a ton of artifacts and feats and stuff in here, but my favorite mechanic introduced in this book is a little 4-page write-up on how to do Western-style spell-slinging duels.
I also like this. It comes early on, and I wasn't expecting it, but I like this. And there's a good reason for this, right? Because the book makes it explicit. If you are anything other than like a first-level adventurer, it is impossible to model a duel, right? Like a quick draw, one shot, and whoever's fastest wins. Without because
D&D is not built for that.
D&D is not built for it, right? You'll throw cantrips back and forth for 10 rounds before anybody's in any kind of trouble. And so they've got a really cool 3 or 4 part back and forth to sort of determine who wins a duel. And it includes things like what's your style, the stare down, your actual attack. And because it's wand slinging, right? This is done with a cantrip. And,
you can use a spell.
You can use a spell. This is, a Burning Wheel has a similar mechanic for a couple of, for actual duels and for duels of wits. And there are other games that do this. It is sophisticated rock, paper, scissors. What you pick is better against some things and gives you certain advantages if you do a better job of picking than your opponent. But it's still fun, and I am personally much superior and much more interesting than just slinging, Eldritch Blast at each other until one of you runs out of hit points.
You want your players to, be able to yell, "I'm calling you out," and
right.
So
if you're gonna do Western, you got to have, pistols at dawn, high noon.
I'm not going to say the wand rules or the duel rules are worth the price of admission by themselves because, it's a big book that costs money. But they are well worth if you're adding one rule, especially if you're looking for this for your own game that's unrelated to Eberron, and you're like, I want I'm running a game set in a wizard school, and I want some kind of wizard dueling rules that I can slap on 5e.
Any kind of wizard duel, yeah.
And how it works is essentially you play a fancy game of elevated, rock, paper, scissors, Lizard Vulcan, Spock, or whatever the 5
That's right.
person
Lizard Spock, whatever it is, the 5 version.
So you pick 5 styles, you pick them in secret. Each style has an advantage over 2 other styles. They'll give you a bonus later. And then I think the fun part is that instead of just like rolling initiative and seeing who fires first, you roll initiative. The loser has to declare their kind of wind up action. Do they make a fake out, kind of a feint? Do they try and stare the person down, essentially intimidate them? Do they analyze what the other person's going to do? So they have an opportunity to use one of their many attributes to do that. They both kind of roll a pose check using whatever skill on that table you want. So one character is using dexterity, sleight of hand, and another's using, wisdom, insight. This can give you some bonus d6s to your roll. And then the simplified rule of the cast is that, you declare the stakes at the beginning. And, whoever, if it's first blood, the one person's wounded, they lose a hit dice and they lost the duel. Maybe it's just a matter of honor, or you can, let your players decide, I'm ready to duel this character to the death, right? Which drops them to 0 hit points. So, there's a chance they could die if no one administers first aid. I can't, often when I see supplements make additional rules for whatever thing for 5e, usually I can immediately be like, well, this isn't going to work, or I would do it this way. And I imagine there might be some changes I might make to this down the right line, but I can think of no better way to do this without, this is what I would use.
I imagine, I guess it means that it needs some play testing, but on my read, it does a really good job of letting characters of different types excel, and there's enough, not like chance or randomness, but you're how good you are at picking or how lucky you are, but also making you feel like you have some control. Like this is a good system for modeling the intensity and tension of a duel. I like it. I think it's good.
My only complaint here is that the table of, your rock, paper, scissors, lizard, Spock, your dueling style tables, like what you do during the stare down, those can fit on one page plus the quick guide of how to do it. And I wish I had that. I can make it, using snipping parts of the thing from Windows and pasting it into a Google document and printing it off. I wish it had come with that page, and I wish it had come with a page that you can print off or copy and then cut out into 5 playing cards, because the players have to choose their approach in secret. And if you could hand them a card, glue whatever you printed off on the back of a poker card, that would feel Western to me. And being able to put their card down would be super easy. A missed opportunity not to include those 2 pages. Yeah, you should do that if you want to use this system.
Yeah, it is simple and relatively simple, and you can put all the information on a sheet of paper. I agree with Matt. Missed opportunity, not a huge deal, but this is great and important, right? If you're gonna have a Western, you gotta have duels, gotta have shootouts.
Yeah, and so the rest of the book is, we've got artifacts and some feats. I don't really have anything to say about those other than a couple of the feats seem like they're missing the ability score bump.
Yeah.
Everything here is updated to the 2024 rules, including giving wands and orbs weapon properties, which is nice. But yeah, I don't really have any comments on some of the mechanics here.
I don't have anything to say. My only comment observation is that, to me, both in terms of the artifacts and feats and the subclasses, of which there are a few, they did a really good job of making them flavorful but not mechanically overpowered,
burdensome.
In my opinion.
Yeah.
Burdensome, in my opinion.
Yeah.
In a lot of cases, actually, I think they're probably weak, but I think that's good. I think we need more. If we're going to get any more subclasses or races or feats or anything, they need to be more flavor or more utility and less just raw power. There's already plenty of power creep in the 2024 version, so I really like the approach that they mostly took in this book, which is, here are some things that are very flavorful and specific to the setting that are not mechanically, they're fine, but they're not optimal.
I think then we should talk about chapters 3 and 7 together. We're given a starting town, Quickstone, and a starting adventure, Heart of Stone, and they go together. Quickstone is one of the best starting towns I've seen in a Dungeons and Dragons publication in a long time. Right? It's small enough that it's grokkable, but interesting enough that the players will want to come back here for at least the first couple arcs of a campaign.
Yeah, I love Quickstone. It is a classic Western town, border town with a couple of great fantasy twists, right? And it has everything you need for an adventure and little else. It's not too much. In fact, it's got exactly enough in my opinion. There's a couple of rich folks, there's a church, there's a couple of inns, there's a train station, some a shanty town, some ruins, and a bunch of interesting characters. And this is the foundation of the adventure.
And it's perfect in that it's the frontier region in a microcosm. You've got the representatives from the Dragon Mark houses, and they all have an agenda here. It's at the end of the lightning rail. Will it be continue? Will Droem or Breland, either of them approve of building the lightning rail further? This is like a big question. And then a lot of there's little hints of everything in the town that could lead your players in any direction. So it's the perfect starting town, whether you want to run Chapter 7 Heart of Stone, or whether, you just need a base for whatever campaign you're planning in this region. A perfect example is there's a couple people from Drome here, more than a couple, but they all kind of, Drome's a very complicated politically nation with all these different groups of monsters, basically only held together in coalition by the awesome power of essentially the Norns. Controlling things.
Yes, right.
And there's representatives from different factions. They all kind of want different things, and so that's we love to see that classic good building stuff.
And this, it has a great map. It has all kinds of good detail. This would be a thing that you could borrow and modify. I think it works especially well specifically to Eberron, but it is, if you wanted a fantasy Western town in another setting, you could make this the origin point for a hex crawl in any number of settings. This is one of the better, the section, chapter 3, the section on Quickstone is it's great. Tons of detail, tons of locations, tons of characters, and lots to work with.
Yeah. We didn't even mention this, Rob, but if you wanted to do a full D&D preacher campaign where the focus is religion, there's enough unique religious factions and characters and locations here that you could do that. If you wanted to do your all cleric paladin druid party where everyone's a devout religious person, this would be a great starting place.
Yeah. There's a lot of attention paid to the faiths of Drome in this region, and including a couple of unique ones that are or sort of subcults. It's very well thought out. If you did want to orient this around a Western preacher type of thing, it would work really well here.
Okay, well, let's talk about Heart of Stone, which is a level 1 through 5 adventure, and it's about 50 pages. It'll take your players, I'm going to say somewhere between 4.5 and 7 sessions to get through. It is not super long, which is great. And it has at least in my read, a very accelerated leveling pace, which I think is perfect for an Eberron campaign. You want to get your players up to level 5 and then do the majority of the campaign 5 through 12. And if I'm not mistaken, this adventure is primarily written by Imogen Gingell. And I have to say, I've read a lot of starting adventures. I would say this one's in the top tier. It's not the most complicated adventure of all time, but it's a great mix of the things you want to introduce to new players.
I have one big picture complaint that I will talk about at the end, but I otherwise agree with Matt. This is a very well written, very tightly constructed starting adventure. It is very easy to see how you would run it. There's, I think, to me, the perfect mix of player choice, but also not too much player choice, enough so that they have lots to do, but aren't going to run off and lose the plot. It's not railroady, but it is focused. I think it does a really good job also of introducing a bunch of the different factions and characters and themes and setting up for all kinds of other adventures.
Yeah, I don't think the text says this anywhere, but my tip is if you want to play an Eberron Western campaign or a Western, D&D campaign, you run your players through this adventure, you take notes, and you do all your what's my big campaign going to be about while they're playing through these first 5 levels. And then you don't have to like wait to get started. And then this is perfectly set up for, you know, your campaign to be about whatever it is that you wanted to construct. And it gives you plenty of time to do it. This is exactly what I think all setting books should have, an adventure that is just like this.
Yeah.
Spoilers for the adventure to follow, but the basic outline is the players arrive in town, and of course, if you're a fan of Eberron, you know that the fast transportation is notoriously unreliable because some pulp action always happens.
Right.
The train is attacked by cultists and the conductor is murdered. The players also during this action scene or like right before it have a chance to meet a lot of the NPCs that they need to know to do the adventure. It really encourages like, hey, there's a lot of investigation and talking to people, but like we're putting, you know, the main cast in front of you from right in the beginning.
The opening scene is they're on a train headed west. There's a chance for them to talk to some people. There's some other passengers, and then they are attacked, like Matt said, by some kobold cultists. This is such a classic. It's such a classic that in my
it's a train robbery
RPG that I am writing and working on, stay tuned, I wrote the exact same sort of like starting setting scene because it's great. It's a perfect way to, in a action-packed way, introduce the setting and get your players to know what's going on and get engaged. It's, you know, they also like got to stop the train, and it's so good because it introduces the setting and the characters and the just all at once. But
the opening scene
very,
is
like,
a lot
frenetic, action-packed way. Like your players will not be bored.
Yeah, it's all the 3 things you would want from an Eberron campaign in a single scene, which is a cinematic pulp action combat, like a crazy thing to use your wits and ingenuity, stop a runaway train, and meet some weird people who all have their own agendas, you know, all rolled into one. The players then have a chance to like catch a breather. You have the full town gazetteer to work with. They're approached by the authorities to be like, what was going on? You saved the train, or at least, you know, kept yourselves alive on it as it crashed into the station. Can you help us figure out where these people came from? They have a chance to do some investigations. It's a little handholdy in that the next thing is like, hey, there's been a mine collapse. Go fix it for us. But that's fine for like level 1 players. Perfect. And then they discover that, hey, one of the reasons this is named Quickstone, why there's a mining boom here, is that, you know, this region's connected to a Dalkir, which is a weird from the outer
Plane
limits.
of madness.
Plane of madness, you know, Pinhead place, that like the flesh shapers and stuff like that. There's a great villain in that this Dalkir, which the play, you know, is beyond the power of the players, believes that stone is perfect and flesh is gross. Which, you know, understandable. Sure, we hate flesh.
It's not entirely wrong. Yeah. You know.
Bodies are weird, and he wants to encase everything in beautiful stone. And there's a seal that was uncovered, and the middle part of the adventure is kind of an open-ended collect the MacGuffins, right? Yes. You need 4 weapons made of a special material, bishek, that can either repair or open the seal of the Dalkir's tomb, and the players have a lot of agency in how to collect this, right? If they're like really clever and like we're really interested in talking to people and exploring the town, like they will, I think, naturally know where to go next to find the things. However, there's enough like, hey, if your players are stuck, this person comes up or this thing happens to introduce them. And the collectathon thing, you know, I'm making a comparison to Vecna Eve of Ruin, where it's always go to a thing, fight a thing, talk to a person who tells you exactly where to go. You know, one is go negotiate with this mysterious Medusa, who I think the players are going to really love, that wears a blindfold in town, that the players have all this opportunity to interact with and see if you can earn her trust. And here's a bunch of different ways to do that. Another's a classic dungeon crawl with 2 factions of kobolds. Another's let's go like back in time with an orc druid. There's a good variety here.
Yes. It's a good. It's diverse, right? It's dispersed, and you have choices about how to go about it, and in which order. Which, like I said before, it's exactly the right amount of agency. You do have to do the things, but you can do them in a number of different ways, and in a number and sort of like any order that you want. And then it really like kicks off at the end once you've gathered all the MacGuffins. The bad guys attack Quickstone, and there's a big climactic fight with Diorite, who is a gargoyle servant of Orlask, this Dalkir. There's a really cool final fight in like a demiplane where like there's a bunch of stone hands that are all reaching across and make it like a really cool battleground. It's very, very action-packed and cinematic, like we discussed, a very, very dramatic end, and then it's sort of like open-ended what happens from there, assuming that your players defeat Diorite and the machinations of Orlask, the Dalkir.
Yeah, I think the end was lessened to me in that the players get a druid ally who knows the gatekeeper ritual. I would have loved if this, during their kind of like travel back in time to like a vision of the original sealing, that this druid had to sacrifice herself so that the players can learn this, and that by getting this, all of them now know the ritual, so they can all go do it themselves. Once they get all of the MacGuffins, instead they have to have the druid tag along. That's fine. You might want to keep this druid around for other plot reasons for your later campaigns. Personally, I always like it when the players have to do the thing themselves instead of guard the ally that's doing the thing. But whatever, it's an epic final fight. I will say that there's, you have a whole gazetteer. This is perfect setup for continuing the campaign. I would have loved a hint or two as to what is actually the thing that caused the weakening of the prison. I don't need a definitive answer, but I would have loved how is like expansion of the, let's say, Dragonmark houses in the region, or the mining of Quickstone, or maybe it's Droham's Sorakelt. Like, give me some ideas, so if I want to directly continue this adventure based off the prison weakening, I had some ideas. Other than that, though, great starting adventure. Big picture ideas and complaints, Rob.
My only like big picture complaint, and it's I guess like more of just a preference, but I really loved how this adventure started. But as soon as they got off of the lightning rail, it turned into a standard fantasy quest. And I would have liked, in a Western setting, I would have liked a Western adventure, right, in this. So I would have preferred if like it was about an evil Aurum land baron trying to buy up all the farms outside of Quickstone or something. Like Tribex hustlers or something. That's not like particularly grand. That's like what I love about like a Western. This was a good adventure though, and like I think this will appeal to a lot of people. That just like, to me, what I love about the Western, what I love about the Western genre, did not appear in this adventure as much as I would like. That was like really my only complaint about the adventure.
Yeah, I think this is similar to my complaint, which is like the villain, the servant of Orlask, is just kind of a creature that was imprisoned with them, and yeah, they're pretty standard fantasy. Like, I think the way to around your complaint, or the fix I would make, is that their like servant on the ground is the land baron, is the captain of the bandit thing, to tie into some more Western opponents and villains. Yeah, I could have used, I think maybe this is my big picture complaint with the town of Quickstone too. I could have used a few more real dastardly people in the town.
That's
There's a
true.
lot of interesting NPCs. I think Eberron does a great mix of being like all the factions are like shades of gray and stuff like that. But then, some of them are truly evil.
I was
right?
going to say, the only problem with the whole shades of gray thing, which is great, is like, you don't have to give me real heroes, but give me some real villains. Give me some
Eberron
give me some
has
bastards,
that, right?
Yeah.
The Lords of Rust, they're
Yes.
like monsters, and then just human monsters who are just pure evil, capitalism, all these.
Yeah,
things.
the Emerald Claw is pretty like unabashedly like evil.
I actually think the Emerald Claw is just fine. They're proud servants of the folk religion of
undead
Karn.
dragon queen.
Yeah. A lot of them don't know that when they join.
Sorry, not the Emerald Claw.
No,
however, the person they serve is unabashedly evil. Or
the Dreaming Dark.
I was gonna say the Dreaming Dark, pretty evil. Understandably evil. Like they've come from a different dimension and they serve like a different purpose, but they're bad. They want to they're pretty bad. But yeah, it's not like there's no bad guys in Eberron, right? So like give us some real, like, have all the shades of gray, have all the like complicated Western archetypes, but then give us some just bastards. Yeah, I would have also liked some real just like awful folk.
Yeah, in the like starting town of the NPCs you interact with, there's no one in the town who's like, oh boy, you're that guy in town, you're the Cy Tolliver that like players can't take out at first, but after a few levels, they're going to be so happy when they, throw him out of his, second story window into the street and watch him, meet his end in the mud,
Yes. Yeah, that is true. I would have liked some more of those. All in all, though, this is really good. It's a great starting town, great starting adventure.
It's even got a puzzle that doesn't suck.
I was gonna say you like the puzzle. It seems like the kind of thing you would hate.
I kind of like the puzzle
in
that there were so many different ways to solve it. Like you could just be, good at music, which probably a character would be. There's enough like investigation where like just you touch a thing and a music note plays. There's. I thought this puzzle of most of the is very, very solvable.
I liked this puzzle too. I thought it was clever. I would probably fail it personally, but my players would probably succeed. So that means it's good. I was sure that you were going to hate it because it is complicated, but you're right that they give a lot of. It's a music puzzle with some chords, but there are many, many different approaches or many different clues and tips that you can get that will help you get there, even if your players are not automatically equipped to solve it.
Right. I think it's nice because if your players, one, it's nice in that players can just interact with the puzzle. They can touch a thing and a note plays. And then they should be like, oh, well, the answer is playing some kind of music or something like that. And then visually, it looks like a music staff, and then like textually there's a clue of the musical notes correspond to words, and then if you have to like give them a clue or like they roll a knowledge whatever or a performance check, you can give them a clue that still then lets them interact and solve the puzzle.
All right,
well, we're quick, we're dead, the quick stone in the dead stone, we did it. It's again, this is a little sad. I want to just thank Keith Baker and Wayne Chung and Imogene Gingell and basically all the people who have been making these like 3 or 4 Eberron books that have come out for 5th edition, and it kind of sucks in that they make these books and you weren't going to make a lot of money off of them anyways, but then because they have to be released through the DMs Guild, everyone's already making 50%. It's a real Western mining town, company town situation, but so it's a real labor of love. And as a longtime fan of Eberron, I love seeing new Eberron books. I wish they were made under better circumstances, but I'm glad we got them.
I'm glad they got to make them. It's the setting that we got the most information for in the sort of 5e era. There were not are not a lot of other people working very hard on setting splat books or setting books in general. So I'm glad they did it. I don't know what's next for Keith Baker and crew, but I hope that they can get theirs one way or another.
Yeah. Well, after this, I'll go play some Gloom or Illimat. Enjoy another Phoenix Dawn Command, another Keith Baker property. But Eberron will never die as long as. The great thing about Eberron is we really do now have enough source books, and if you go to Keith Baker's blog, you can probably find any answer or inspiration for a part of the world that you wanted to explore in a campaign that you need.
Yeah. And
I will say, actually, a lot of this section here, a lot of roads point to that main city in Greywall. And if you didn't know, probably because Keith can't mention it in the book, but if you search for like Greywall PDF or whatever, you can find it. It's, I think, from like one of the digital Dragon magazines that came out in 4th edition, but there's no mechanics information.
Oh, yeah.
There's a 20-page guide to Greywall. So if you're like, well, Greywall seems like a really interesting place, there's already a 20-page guide by Keith Baker about Greywall. It's not free, but you can find it for free because I don't think Wizards even sells.
I don't think
you can't go to D&D Beyond and buy their old digital Dragon magazines. So I just want to point that out to everyone there. If you look for the Greywall, section deep dive from Dragon magazine, you can find it.
Yeah. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. If you have thoughts, questions, or comments, please write us at dmofnone@gmail.com. Hit us up in our Discord or any of our other social channels. We would like to do some more Q&As soon, another mailbag. So if you have questions you've been holding off on, send us anything that we can talk about. We always love to hear from you.
And if you want to support the show, you can head over to patreon.com and search up the Keith Baker Patreon for more Eberron material, or maybe our Patreon, patreon.com/Dungeon Master of None, if you like these episodes and want some bonus episodes and other cool stuff too.
Thanks for listening, everybody, and keep rolling them dice.